Good morning, preppers, from the great state, the most beautiful state, in my opinion, Michigan. We love Michigan. And today's video is a little bit off the cuff. And I ask you to please bear with me and stick through the video because I would like to get your opinion at the end as far as the way you think things are going as well. Of course, we saw all the elections and everything coming through. And I'm going to be completely blunt. The people in Michigan are amazing people. However, the governor of Michigan is not an amazing person. My opinion, and I'm entitled to my opinion just like you are. I think she is like the nastiest of wretches. She's a horrible lady. And as far as voting goes, we always go out and vote, and she did not lose her seat, but instead actually remained in power, which blows my mind. Now, when I actually look at Michigan, again, why I call Michigan the great state, because if you actually look at it, and I know a lot of states actually experience the same thing, you'll find that it's the cities that are voting blue. It's the cities that are voting for Whitmer. Whereas if you actually see the rest of the countryside, all across Michigan, it's red. And I think when you talk about like good people, working people, people who actually have common sense and actually traditional values in many sort of ways, you'll find these people will actually vote red. And that's what we do. As far as our family goes, we vote red. And I mean, I'm not going to say I vote across the board red. I'm not going to go there. I really try to keep an actual level head, and I try to keep my intelligence about it and not follow bandwagons and follow what everybody else does. But instead, we try to look at values, what we look at as far as just the way America has been and the way America is falling apart. And when I see people like Whitmer staying in power, and I see that practically speaking, it's only the cities in Michigan, which, by the way, the cities in Michigan are, I mean, I love Michigan, and we do go to the city and go shopping, but I should pull up the stats. I should have done that for this video, and I apologize. But if you actually look at like the 10 most violent cities in America, or maybe the 20 most whatever, there's numerous cities in Michigan that fit that bill. Detroit, Lansing, Flint, Grand Rapids, etc. And don't you think it's amazing that when we actually see this increase in violence, and increase in thefts and all these crimes taking place in these cities, it happens to be the same cities are also voting blue. I find that to be very interesting, don't you? That we tend to think that when we actually live in a city, and Ashley and I lived in cities many years, that you tend to think that you're more cultured and you're more understanding and you know how things work better. But the people in the cities see people out in the country as being kind of like, well, you're just kind of dim-witted and you just don't really understand how things work and you don't have much culture. And that's not true. I mean, in some cases, it might be. Of course, it works both ways also. But instead what happens is this. When you find people in the cities, they may thrive a lot more on culture, but I think they also thrive more on simply just the way trends go. And they're not very well grounded. Not everybody in cities. We have some amazing friends who still live in cities, and they actually are very well grounded people. However, people in the country, although they may not make it to the ballet or to the symphony very often, what they do make it to very often is their dinner table and sitting with their family, and to their houses of worship, which, in America, it's mostly Christianity, but we find it as far as like Judaism and such too. We find a lot of people out in the country are doing things the way it's been done for hundreds, if not thousands of years around the world, just sticking to family and bringing your kids up. And what I find is when the kids are not brought up right, they end up moving to the city. So it's very interesting that we see this trend in the United States, this trend going away from traditional way things have been done for the longest time. And it happens to be where those people are moving away from the trends, moving to the city. And the city is actually have incredible violence, incredible crime rates. And it's also the places that vote blue. Now, I think it's too soon to tell, at least from what I've seen in the news as I'm making this video, as you're seeing it yesterday, to see if the House and the Senate are going to turn red. And I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to warn you, that it's been very interesting how the last 2 years, as the White House especially, but as the House and the Senate stuff have been blue, there really hasn't been a whole lot of like civil unrest, not a lot of violence, not a lot of problems with rioting, etc. Isn't that interesting? Because just prior to that, there was a lot, but then it went quiet for a couple of years. And now suddenly we are actually on the verge of possibly having the Senate and or the House turning red. I warn you, this violence, this civil unrest very well may return because of this. Because what I find is, and here's basically the culmination of everything I'm talking about, when you take the people who live out in the country and you start to like warp their minds and they start going down these paths away from tradition and they move into the cities and they enjoy that warped mind living. And I'm not talking about people who just enjoy culture like the symphony, but there's just like an air of, and we see in cities all the time, where it's like a warped mind where they don't look at tradition and family values anymore. And that's scary because, again, these people vote blue. So what happens next? When we see a red House or a red Senate, or even worse, a red White House, guess what happens? Their warped mind turns them into rioting and problems, because these people are the same people who can't carry on a civil discussion with you or me. And they literally take it upon themselves to do what they can to cause a ruckus, to be rebellious, to cause problems, to hopefully get people to switch back to blue. Because there's like a little thing in the back of their mind is, isn't it funny how everything's blue right now? Biden's in office and our streets are calm. And so what happens is, just simply because of human instincts, is you might think, oh, I'm going to vote blue because at least things are peaceful. But are they peaceful? Not even close. Not even close to being peaceful. We definitely see, instead of peacefulness, a totalitarian regime coming in who continuously, and we're talking about Biden here, continuously goes off on people who are against him and says things like, those people who are against me are extremist. Really, who's the extremist here? Because they're basically getting the FBI henchmen after people. They're arming the IRS with automatic weapons, the IRS, and the list goes on and on. So who's the extremist, and who are the ones who are really trying to cause peace? It's the Reds who are trying to cause peace, going back to family values. This isn't the first time we've seen this, though. It is very reminiscent, using these strong arm tactics to say, look, everything's peaceful right now, as they use weapons to basically push down the civilization. It's called the Nazis. Food for thought.